Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the high-level session on Youth and the Decade of Action. My name is Kehkashan Basu. I'm 19 years old. I'm a United Nations Human Rights Champion, Youth Ambassador of World Future Council, and Founder-President of Green Hope Foundation.
And I'm Raphael Obonyo. I'm the convener of the Youth Congress and an alumnus of the UN Habitat Youth Advisory Board. Happy to co-moderate with Kehkashan.
Yes, we're very honored to be your moderators for this amazing session. Before we start, we would like to tell you that this is a silent session, so please make sure that you have your headsets with you. And in order to hear our amazing panelists, you will need to put your headsets on. So please make sure that you have your headsets with you. Any further announcements for social media?
No, I think for social media, hashtag WUF10. Please make sure you share whatever discussions and conversations we are having here with the rest of the world. Hashtag WUF10 and tag UN Habitat and UN Habitat Youth.
Okay, and before we begin, we would like to invite Sharmaarke to please share a few words with us.
Let's give Sharmaarke a round of applause as he gets on stage to share with us a few thoughts. Thanks, Sharmaarke.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is a really neat way of speaking without any speakers. So if you don't have a headset on, this is the only way that you're going to hear the panelists speak. This is really innovative and a new way. I think it's certainly taught us something at Habitat to do these silent sessions. So we welcome you again this afternoon. So we had a really productive discussion in the morning. This is another, continuing on that discussion around the decade of action. We want to deepen the conversation a bit more, and it's an exciting panel that we have here for you. But we also want to remind you that this is just to whet the appetite. We have breakout sessions on key themes to really deepen the discussion a bit more. Just outside in Hall 2, the rooms are going to be all displayed on the screen before the session closes, so we welcome you to join us in continuing our conversation. I just wanted to, again, there's a lot of hard work that goes into organizing events like this, and really wanted to give a quick shout out to our team of volunteers, amazing young people that have been working diligently for the last 2 months. So just a round of applause to our team really quickly. And again, want to thank everyone again. We have 2 more huge events throughout the week. The schedule will be put on the display, and I want to turn it over again to the moderators, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sharmaarke.
Thanks, Sharmaarke, for the announcement, but also thanks for the good work. I think Sharmaarke and Doug have been leading the team that has made this possible. And I just asked again that you give them a round of applause for the great leadership that they've provided.
As you know, the theme for this session is Youth in the Decade of Action. And really, we have entered the last decade of action before the expiration of the Sustainable Development Goals. And here, cities and youth play really important roles because, for example, while urbanization has given us a lot of challenges, it has also given us tremendous opportunities to make sure that we are able to achieve sustainable development. And youth is one of the largest stakeholders of society, need to be involved, need to be engaged and empowered in the decision-making processes to make sure that we are able to achieve sustainable cities and thereby sustainable development. So we are very excited to have such amazing panelists with us here today to talk about youth, the decade of action, and sustainable cities.
Amazing, amazing. I think it's quite amazing. I was saying in the morning that if I had a chance, Kehkashan should have been on the panel because of the way she has a good grasp of issues, and I think that is really amazing. Thanks for that introduction. We now want to introduce our panelist. We'll start with our first panelist, but before we do that, we just want to remind all of you that this is a youth session, so we need to look youthful, stay excited, keep smiling. You can't have sad faces in a youth event, so please cheer up, and when you feel like you need to clap, please clap also. And whenever you have an opportunity to share a point, please share it with a lot of energy, with a lot of enthusiasm, because this is our space as young people. And so that is what I want to remind both our panelists and, of course, participants who are here. So to start us off, we want to welcome I've been rehearsing on how to pronounce this name. The first one, I'll get it right. The second one, she's called Christine Knudsen. Did I get it right?
It's pretty good.
Pretty close, huh?
Pretty good.
Yeah, Knudsen, she's the Director, External Relations, Strategy, Knowledge and Innovation Division at the UN Habitat. Let us give a round of applause as she makes remarks. So each panelist will have at least 3 to 5 minutes whenever you have a chance to make your opening remarks. So welcome, Kristen.
Oh, I get to start now.
Yes. You get to start.
Fantastic. So, you know, it's very strange to be speaking through the headset because I was ready to shout and yell and be energetic, and then I'm afraid I'm going to blow people's earphones.
We were feeling like that since morning, so you can imagine. Yeah.
And I have to say, I raised my hand because I thought you were going to introduce all of the other panelists, and then I realized maybe with my name, you knew which one I was. So we had this morning, we had very good introduction that we had panelists balancing men and women. We're a little out of balance today, but I think the force of our facilitator and hopefully some of my words will make up for that balance. So thank you very much for being here. I'm turning around to look at everybody. Can you see me up there? Maybe not. It's wonderful to be here. And when I was asked to join this panel, I was especially happy. I have just joined Habitat about a month ago. And I've come from a long history of working in humanitarian affairs, humanitarian response, and specifically child protection, and working with young people, children, youth, adolescents, in some of these hard-hit cities, in some of these really worst places to be a young person. And it's especially good now to be with all of you, as I'm with you in Habitat, and talk about the role of youth and young people in the future of sustainable cities. I really want to challenge all of you in the course of today, tomorrow, and this entire week and going out of this week to have those voices heard. I don't need to invite you to do that. I just want to encourage you to do that. Have your voice heard in every one of the sessions. Make sure you bring that voice, that energy, that vision into each one of our sessions going forward. So that's my first comment as we start today with the assemblies. But I also want to speak a little bit about UN Habitat because the role of young people cannot be more important. The role of having safe, sustainable, secure cities for children and youth to have the best opportunity to thrive, to reach full potential, to achieve all of the goals that they set for themselves in their lives, improving the livelihoods and the opportunities for livelihoods for young people living in slums and informal settlements. It's absolutely vital. Inclusion in governance and decisions that are being made in those cities, the economic life in these urban settlements is vital. So I think it's being held, this assembly, at a vital moment in both where we are in the world. We talked about the decade of action, but also where we are at UN Habitat as we start a new strategic plan, a new direction over the coming years, where we are focusing very much on inclusion. Inclusion is going to be vital in all of its sense to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the SDGs, I think you know, are the world's blueprint. It's really a plan of action, a direction to travel to achieve a more sustainable future for all. And with the global challenges that we all face, poverty, inequality, climate change, peace and justice, how do we make cities and settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable? These 17 goals, which are represented in the SDGs, are all interconnected. They're all interrelated. They reinforce each other, but they come together in SDG 11, which is about cities. And that's why we're here today, thinking about all of these aspects and how they come together in urban areas. Now, this made me kind of reflect on a few other meetings that I've been in lately, and you know, you hear this thing a lot. Oh, well, young people are the leaders of tomorrow. And I usually say, no, they're the leaders of today. There's not a need to wait for that to recognize the leadership. There's not a need for that to take time. Young people are the leaders of today, and that should be recognized and understood in an inclusive way. And this made me think a little bit about cities and the future that we have. So you said you're 19, I'm 52. Okay, so in the next 30 years, you're going to be about my age. In 2050, with all of this urbanization that's happening, 70% of the city's infrastructure has not been built. In the next 30 years, we're going to have to see amazing progress, and just in the infrastructure that will be built, 70% of it isn't even built yet. We think about it in terms of sustainable materials, but we should also be thinking about it in terms of inclusive planning and processes. And where young people have that voice, that inclusion in governance, decision, planning, cities are for those who plan it. So this is where we have to find that space. You got 30 years. So maybe with that, talking a little bit about the region, and I will try and be brief. I know the time is running. It's important to think about where we are as well in the region. In the Middle East and North Africa, what's happening? Cities are increasingly exposed, and especially when you look at this region, natural disasters, flood, heat, drought, climate. But we've also been seeing in this region, the number of natural disasters around the world has almost doubled since the 1980s, but it's almost tripled in countries in this region. And more than 370 natural disasters affecting 40 million people over the last 30 years, costing $20 billion. We can do better. We need to be looking at how to make these cities and these settlements prepared and resilient when crisis strikes. Building a better future is only possible with serious and committed action right now. 1.2 billion young people in the world, the most connected generation in history, although there is a digital divide when it comes to girls and boys, women and men. I'll come back to that at some other point. We have this connected generation to hold the hope and create concrete progress towards a more sustainable, equitable world today and tomorrow. So I encourage you in the days to come, we will be compiling commitments and actions that are identified in each one of the sessions that you will be attending. Please bring your commitments forward, bring your actions forward, and let's see how we make this a decade of action together.
Fantastic. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you. Christine, thank you so much for reminding us that youth are leaders of today, and that if we want to have sustainable cities, we must make them inclusive cities, and if you have to build better futures, then we cannot leave youth behind. Absolutely. I think it's quite amazing. And I think with your wealth of experience, there's no doubt that UN Habitat is going to benefit a lot from that. So
if you come with us and help us.
We are with you. Thank you so very much. Let's give another round of applause. Kehkashan, did you want to say something about what Christine was saying?
I found it very relevant that you stated natural disasters, because Target 11B of Goal 11 actually expires this year, and it talks about adaptation to climate change and resilience to natural disasters. So it's extremely important we really start taking action right now and just reset our milestones to make sure that we are able to achieve the goals that, of course, end in 2030, but also the targets that have the expiration date of 2020 this year. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Stefan Germann, who is the CEO of the Botnar Foundation in Switzerland. Mr. Germann, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much to be here. And I'm pleased that our foundation has started a partnership with UN Habitat. We are very much focusing as a foundation to see how can we use digital technologies, specifically artificial intelligence and data science, to improve the well-being of adolescents in cities. Why have we sort of chosen that strategic focus? I think we need to understand that what is happening right now in the space of digital transformation, that the advent of artificial intelligence has come to a level of sophistication that will profoundly transform every aspect of our society in a way that is more transformational than a world before electricity and after electricity. And if you just hold a little moment, and I posed that question this morning in a session with young people on innovation and digital transformation for cities, how the world was, I mean, how would we be in here without electricity? We've lost sort of the understanding what it means. But what we see at the moment, that AI and these frontiers technologies are really transforming society in a rapid way. But there's a big challenge that most of the policymakers who are shaping policies within urban spaces, you know, they're of my age. And we are, you know, we have an analog mindset in a digital age. Whereas young people, that's the first generation of young people who have grown up in a digital age with a digital mindset. And there's really a difference between the digital and analog sort of mindset, specifically if we are in a digital age. And so that creates both a tension, but as well a tremendous opportunity. If we can bridge partnerships within co-leadership, and I fully agree, young people are leaders in their spaces. And if we can create this partnership of co-leadership within urban spaces to turn digital transformation of urban into having more livable and better cities, that's very powerful. So as a foundation, we are working with multiple partners in that space, specifically pushing innovation where the market fails. And where taxpayers and quite government and cities cannot innovate at the frontiers that often if it involves taxpayers' money, because innovation is high risk. Businesses quite often, they only innovate if there is a clear sort of seen return from a financial point of view. So as foundations, we have a very critical role to push innovation that really drives the societal benefits and is higher risk. And then working with partners like UN Habitat or partners with city councils, we have a number of partners from cities we engage with here, we can really then bring up to scale. Because cities, they have a revenue basis, and if they have seen something that it's beneficial and proven, they can easily scale it. One example which I like, and some of our organizations that we have established or are starting this dialogue, is a foundation called Block by Block Foundation. They are using a video game that's very well known called Minecraft to do engagement with urban planners to totally transform cities. And urban planners are just totally amazed how young people, when they use Minecraft and map their cities, how they actually transform urban spaces. It's just one of many, many examples. I think as well, digital transformation, and in our session today, we've seen young people from Kenya and Vietnam and other places really give practical examples how they can transform cities. One from India called Safety Pin, which is an app that basically is again participating young people in mapping where are the unsafe spaces in a city, and then engage with policymakers to make the city for everybody a safer place. So these are just some examples where we can see how digital transformation can be really transformative to turn cities into much more livable spaces. And just sort of the last before somebody else can take on, we have a stand here at H718, and we would like to encourage all of you, but especially the young people, to come, as we have a mapping exercise where we want to map all the exciting digital technologies that transform urban spaces into healthier and safer cities around the world. So help us in that mapping and put your ideas and projects onto that map. Thank you.
Fantastic. I like the idea of, let's clap for him first. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefan. I really like the idea of harnessing youth innovation to transform cities and to build sustainable cities. I think that's quite amazing. And the idea of, maximizing on technology to build sustainable cities, I think that is fantastic. I like the issue of shifting from analog kind of mindset to digital kind of mindset, but he quickly also says that we need to partner in terms of trying to see how experience can work together with fresh ideas and creative ideas from young people to build something more sustainable. So that is quite amazing. We want to, because one of our panelists will be stepping out, so we just want to make this a little interactive before she leaves. So we're going to open it up for one question from the moderator and 2 questions from participants. Also, it's a good idea not to wait until the very end when the panelists are already tired to respond to questions. So I think that's part of the reason why we are going to open it up. So Kehkashan, do you have a question for both panelists or either of them?
Yeah, either if you can actually answer this. What role does culture play for youth in relation to achieving sustainable urban development, especially given that the theme of this year's WF is connecting culture and innovation?
Great. So maybe we can respond to that as we try to get mics to get to the audience. Let's hear responses from I mean, for the question first, then we get to the participants.
Well, I think in some ways, I find the word culture, I find a little problematic, because we talk about a culture of innovation, a culture of respect, and our norms and practices and behaviors is what I think of as culture. But then we think about artistic expression as the culture or the traditional heritage. And I think how those interplay, both where we come from and how we're getting to another kind of way of looking at the future, to me this is more of what the culture is. And so how do we think about shifting from a culture of analog to a culture of digital? What does that look like? I think it's absolutely vital. I'm not sure how to do it, but I'm glad that other greater minds are thinking about it. But really thinking about what are the norms, behaviors, and attitudes that we want to see in our interactions. How do we respect art and tradition? How do we respect innovation and creativity? How do we nurture these parts? These, to me, are what the culture is. And that culture is looking for the innovative, interesting, different kinds of solutions that will help us all move towards the SDGs. And so I think if we continue doing business as usual, we'll get the usual results. And looking at how we shift an entire culture to be a little bit more tolerant of risk, innovation, which involves risk of failing, looking at how we iterate, move, and transform more quickly, I think all of those aspects are absolutely vital if we want to actually find solutions for cities that are safe, sustainable, and inclusive.
Absolutely, you said it all. Stefan, would you?
Maybe not everything.
Yeah, and I think I would like to sort of just touch on one aspect in terms of, what is actually culture. And I mean, in the end of the day, it's a lived experience on a day-to-day basis within communities. I mean, it starts on the individual, but it's really the community, the collective level, and it's the lived experience. And we've given some thought as a foundation related to the concept of smart cities, and we actually decided against the concept of smart cities in terms of digital transformation, but really looking at smart communities. And that embeds then the social anthropology into the element of transforming culture and innovation. Culture is not a static issue. Culture continuously evolves and lives. And it's only in that lived experience at the community level. And if we can have, through digital transformation, and we have seen in this, again this morning, I was really impressed how young people in Zanzibar started mapping their entire sort of, ecosystem. And another one in Kenya where they are working in areas where there are waste sites, and young people within these communities started to use data and intelligence to create smarter communities, to have data-driven sort of engagement with the local authorities. And I think that is really the power of smart communities, is bringing somehow politics really back into urban planning and public policy making, because it is not sort of just politics that influences by sort of interests that have no evidence behind, but it's actually data-driven, evidence-based, and that sort of that culture lived experience can really help shape the future with having smarter communities.
Great. I think now we want to throw it back to the audience here. If someone wants to ask a question or make a quick comment. Yes.
I grew up in Yemen, where it is based on villages. And villages is the tradition, the culture, the belonging, the heritage, all and on. The question is, as we're moving forward towards cities, mega cities, our villages are dying, and with it our cultures and traditions, and now we end up with different period of new culture, or maybe clashes of cultures, because to me the value of villages is so unique, but when I lived away from it, I become like among many but alone, but in the village so few but among a group. Thank you.
Good.
Hello, it's on? Yeah. It's on?
It's the first time
okay, yeah. Hello, my name is Yong Chen from IRENA International Renewable Energy Agency. I'm actually asking a question regarding the sustainability for cities, especially the role of the young people can provide. I agree with you that younger generation right now taking the lead, and for the future, but also not only design actually the future city how become climate resilient, which is very important, but also how actually engage the current process, actually trying to stop it as much as possible. And also this is one question regarding the climate. And the second related question is how actually they can transform their lifestyle, that's for future lifestyle, become more sustainable way, as also they influence their peers, the young, the group actually they stand up, talk about it, and how they are influence their peers across the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One more. Where's the mic? Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Salim from the International Federation of Red Cross Red Crescent Societies based in Geneva. We hear all the time youth of the future, and you said no, youth are today, right? But the question I want to ask is, why are we still talking in the 2020s around not engaging young people? Why are we still sort of saying that young people may have a role to play? What is really stopping organizations like ours from really engaging young people? And I want to ask this question both to the panelists, but also to the colleagues here, right? I still am baffled that we're talking today around engaging, or the need to engage young people, recognizing that, but they're still not here. We're still having forums, youth forums that are slightly separate to the main event. We give them a chance to come and talk, but we've given you your space and go off. Why are we not really engaging and empowering young people in that?
Thank you so much. I think we'll throw it back to
our panel,
Christine and Stefan.
Well, I can probably just start with one example. The why is because we are not really challenging ourselves mutually. We just were involved in setting up a digital coalition, a coalition that will drive digital transformation for universal health coverage by 2030. And we last year sort of had a discussion whether we should set up a separate youth council that would sort of advise or influence the kind of organization, the coalition we set up. And actually we decided against it. We said, no, let's do from the very beginning that each of the sort of governance circles that we have that drives, we will have one youth lead with a co-chair who is not a young person. And unless we really build that in and stop doing these kind of like separate kind of events, but really bring it from a governance where really the decisions are taken in terms of content, etc. And I think the problem is that there are too many still uneasy because young people keep us accountable. And so you sometimes prefer to have that at the advisory level than actually on the decision-taking level. And it's really at the core is this can only happen if we really are willing to take this serious and be taken, to account by young people. And that can only happen if we integrate them right at the core. But at, even UNICEF, we take UNICEF, which is a youth organization, go and look who is on the UNICEF board. It's countries representing, it's not young people. Look at my own board. I want to be very transparent. Average age of my own board is 50 plus, but we are focusing on young people. There's a lot of homework we all have to do ourselves. And I think why it's not happening, because we are not reflecting self on our own organizations and how we should transform them, because it's easier to finger point and say, well, you're not including young people, you're not. Do I include young people in the governance seriously?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Christine.
And just to add on that, I mean, we're having a forum where we're inviting young people in instead of co-creating, right? And I think this is the basis of it. And thinking about how to do things differently rather than expecting people to conform to our model, how can our model be created with those who are stakeholders and engaged in the progress that we all want to see? So just to kind of echo that, and it's about young people, it's about older people, it's about persons with disabilities, it's about having co-creation in an inclusive way if you want cities to be inclusive and sustainable. So I think we need to look at that in the bigger question as well. And that is sometimes a challenge because we have our culture that we need to disrupt a bit sometimes and bring in that aspect from the very beginning. With that, I'm afraid I'm going to have to excuse myself. I'm very sorry. I know there were a couple of other questions, but there will perhaps be another time to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much. Let's give Christine and Stefan a round of applause for the wonderful work that they've done. Thank you so much. I now want to introduce Stefan. You're still staying, right?
I am.
Fantastic. Thanks. Now I want to introduce a gentleman who is considered a big celebrity back in Africa and in Senegal. Didier Awadi, who is an artist, but is also the general manager of Studio Sankara. I'm happy that he's joined us here. Let's give him a round of applause.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I was colonized by French, so I speak French. Let me try it in French. I don't speak Swahili. Donc je m'appelle Didier Awadi, rappeur et activiste sénégalais. J'aurais pu dire africain avec un passeport sénégalais. Et parler ici de cultures urbaines est un réel plaisir pour moi, car pour une fois, dans un forum de haut niveau, la culture est prise en compte sérieusement. Elle est prise en compte non pas
very seriously. It's taking into account regarding not on taking into account the different socio-political act as a booster in development. We have decided in Senegal to use culture and rap to transform mentalities. For us, culture is not abstract, it's real, and we have experienced that on the ground. Culture has allowed youth to awaken. It has allowed us to talk to the youth. We need to talk to youth with their codes, with their language. And we found urban culture, rap, to be the best way to talk to youth. Our point was to create animation in public spaces. We wanted to tackle health and economy through rap.
Et donc de politique.
Have managed to talk to youth. We have managed to make them understand that development is the key. If in 2000 or 2012 Senegal was able to create change, it is because of the participation of youth, and this is how we reinforced democracy. I will stop here, but I will tell you that every time we talk about politics in these forums, don't we use youth as a pretext? Here I'm looking around, I don't really see a lot of young people. When I started rapping, I could probably say us as youth, but now I'm looking at youth, but I am not one of it anymore. Today, after 30 years of public or urban culture in Senegal, we've found a bit of results. A budget of 100 million Senegalese francs has been allocated. We have also created a pole for cinema. At the level of the city, we are taken into consideration, and we have reflected at the level of the mayor of the capital of Senegal. We have reflected on how to include youth even more. Today, it's not only older people who take decisions for the youth, but the youth themselves. And this model has been replicated in different regions of Senegal. The Senegalese state has followed the model of Dakar, the capital, and today millions of Senegalese francs are allocated to urban culture, but also to cinema. I don't know if you know how much Senegalese franc, CFA, is worth, but these amounts are important for a country like Senegal. We also have a cinema city these are accomplishments that are certainly modest, but are also very important. If we exclude the youth in Senegal, we will never achieve anything of value. Thank you.
That you brought up the fact that culture, it's not just, it does include music, dance, cinema, theater. There's so many different things that we can involve in making sure that these creative ways, arts, cultures, is a part of sustainable development, especially in cities. I don't think we generally think about music and cinema being a part of cities' development, sustainable development, but thank you so much for bringing that up.
And I like the parting shot that if you exclude the youth, you'll never achieve anything of value.
Absolutely.
I think that is quite powerful.
I think that is a common point that is being brought up, that we really need to include youth right at the core, not just as tokenism. So thank you for bringing that up as well.
Thanks.
Just before we continue, I would like to call Ms. Maria Fernanda Rojas, City Councilor of Bogota, Colombia, to our stage. She's also one of our esteemed panelists. Ms. Maria Fernanda.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks. And next, I want to welcome Mohamed Maliki Mohamed. Mohamed Maliki Mohamed, Rapiee, who is the director of International Youth Center, to make his opening remarks. Welcome, Mohamed.
Thank you, Raphael. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mohamed Maliki, or you can call me Maliki. As a director for International Youth Center, or IYC, in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We are the foundation under the Ministry of Youth and Sports Malaysia. We started our foundation for the last 31 years with the help from people from Fukuoka, Japan. They donated 1 billion yen at the time to build our building, and until now we benefit from this effort to give more to the people. So here I want to start with you to achieve the SDG 11. It's very important to us to have a good element, a good center to give justice to the to the people, how to engage from the rural, suburban, and urban, and cities and mega cities. This is where the model like we, IYC, the International Center, should have. We have facilities, we have programs, and we have experts on this. We deploy our volunteer at international level. We call it MyCore. Since 2016, we deployed to South Asia, we deployed to Middle East, and now 40 of them went to Bangladesh and Nepal as a peacekeeper. So in the context of urbanization and the context of declare action, we now, young people, we need to engage with them, give them some roles to do and to understand. It's not enough to us to tell them this is what you should do, you should do this, but we need to train them. For our MyCore volunteer, we train them for 2 months. We train them for 1 month and deploy them 2 months outside our country. This is the model how, if we deploy them and make them to engage with the people, they will understand more about the problem surrounded them. So this is not the time to our adults to tell our young people this is wrong, this is right, but give them, engage them. That's why we really understand and we follow the positive youth development approach. We understand about how to see all the youth is a potential. They got the potential. We have a program, we call it Yellow Ribbon Program in Malaysia. This is for young people who's involved in Juvana. We give them second chance to involve in volunteer work, to understand and to help others people. So in this opening, what I want to share with you is it's not only the policy, but it's the place and the opportunity to them to see what is before this invisible, now is visible. Give them a chance and let them try, and they will understand more about what is important around them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please give
a round of applause for Mohamed. I like what he says about engaging the youth, that if youth are engaged, they get informed and they get a better understanding, they own, and we are able to achieve a lot more. That is quite fantastic.
Absolutely. And you said we do have the potential, which, yes, age has nothing to do with capability. All of us have potential and capability no matter how old we are. Thank you for bringing that up.
Where I come from, they normally say that the plenary to ask questions, make a comment, and keep it brief, please. Keep it short. That will be very important. Can someone help us with the mics? Fantastic. Your name, where you come from, and then just keep it short.
My name is Aïssata Dié. I'm from Senegal, mais vous me permettrez en fait de parler en.
I will be speaking in French, please. Thank you very much. So, my question is about the gap that exists between countries in Africa. For example, we're going for a zero plastic program. How can we interest the youth in this program? How can we make sure that they participate? And very often when we talk about environmental issues, it's very specific to people the players in this field. How can we interest the youth in these climate change and environmental issues?
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris from Nigeria. Trying to bring to light bringing the youth to the knowledge of the new urban development agenda. You know, that's sustainable program to build the future rightly in the right manner. Yeah, it's like it's a program that is set to take care of the future and the next 10 decades. So it's something we have to also bring the youth into the fold to participate openly in the new agenda, and then follow up with that for the sustainable future to build the cities right. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. We are moving here, but as we move here, I think he mentioned an important point of engaging youth in the new urban agenda. And in fact, we have a session on new urban agenda +5. So I think it will be important for us to also engage in that session to understand where we and where we are moving to. That will be very important.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Isabe Shafik. I come from Uganda. A gentleman or a lady, I can't remember very well, said this world they are into, it is getting outdated, so the youth are having a new version of the updated one. Well, my one inquiry or one question is, because we're interesting the youth to be holding our flag right now, but what's going to happen later on after all this, because we have not feminism came in, then right now it's a movement of young people. So now what is going to happen? Is anyone out there thought of what is going to happen after we've interested the youth with this flag? Yeah, that's my one inquiry. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. The panel, I hope you're taking note of the questions. Here.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost thing, I would beg to disagree with Sir what he told that youth is not included at highest level, because I am 19 and I am serving as a policymaker. I am serving as a diplomatic researcher with European Union. I have served as an expert reviewer with Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So that is one thing. Change is certainly there. Youth have been included at highest policymaking level, but change cannot be sudden. And we have to understand this thing that there is not any kind of magic wand that overnight change will be there. So that was my comment. Now coming to the question, I would like to ask to sir only that when we talk about Generation Z, because Generation Z, I mean, I hope that you might be very well aware about it, we see a sharp contrast in the way Generation Z behaves in Global West and Global East. Probably, you know, I've worked with Global West institutions, European Union and IPCC and United Nations. I stay in New Delhi, India, and what I experience is in Global East there are still some, you know, socio-cultural stigmas, dogmas and stereotypes, particularly related to socially marginalized sections of the society. So how would you suggest Generation Z of Global East should work at present? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we'll come back to the panel.
Yeah.
Right, Kehkashan?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll get back to the panel to try and respond to some of these questions. Yeah, please. They're all smiling. Seems like they liked the questions, right? Okay, let's start with Maria. Yeah, let's start with Ms.
Okay.
Maria.
Pues yo insisto.
Okay, let me insist. I think that young people do participate frequently and deeply. My first-hand experience of young people participation and engagement is that we need to change the system and the way in which we relate with the planet, and that's what you are telling us in very different ways. I think that the difficulty lies with how we interpret what young people are telling us and how to do it. Well, we could do it through different ways so that there is effective engagement and participation, and not only tokenism or not only contributing with good ideas or attending events like this one. No, doing exactly the opposite. The state should move toward the youth. They should go and listen to their ideas and then take decisions on the basis of young ideas. For example, through mechanisms that are called participatory budgeting processes. In Latin America, we are trying to conduct these exercises. This has been done in Brazil for some years, and in Bogota this year, we will start with participatory budgeting. 10% of the resources that are allocated to local governments in Bogota, people will decide about that 10%. And not only they will give ideas like, oh, you could spend this 10% in that project. No, people will decide effectively which is the project that will be funded and how much money it will be earmarked to that project. And this has to be done together with the youth. And hopefully that the Bogota's mayor's decision, by the way, it's the first time that Bogota, the capital of Colombia, has a mayoress, a woman in the city council. She was elected. It's the first time, the first woman. And hopefully this mayoress will provide that space to the young people so that whatever they decide in this participatory budgeting process will later be implemented in the city. And something else I would like to mention is that when it comes to implementing those projects and those programs, young people should be the one implementing them directly. And I said this in the previous panel I took part, because of course we listen to young people, to their ideas, but when it comes to the implementation, someone else does it. So it's important that we move from only getting ideas from them to their own implementation of urban projects. And it's a good way to get them engaged. In the case of Bogota, for example, we're talking about 500,000 young people that are not in education or in employment. That's what we call in Spanish a need in English. It's a need. The speaker said she doesn't know if that translates into English, but it's an increasing phenomenon. There are increasingly more young people not in education or employment. So this policy change, the fact that they become the ones implementing the projects, it's a key element to start changing that figures and that trend. We need people, young people in employment or education.
Thank you so much, Miss Maria, for that very enriching response. Stefan?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I would like to pick up maybe first on the sort of the plastic question from Senegal and how young people are involved in climate sort of efforts. And in the session that we had this morning on digital and innovation, there was one good example where one of the very young speakers, probably 16, 17-year-old, is driving in Uganda a digital petition to ban plastic bags and take environmental and sort of climate change related actions. And it just shows how the digital transformation actually enables young people huge platforms in terms of mobilization and engagement that previously was not possible. So as a result, the young people developed sort of 2 quotes or 2 points for the upcoming declaration for the Decade of Action, and I'll quickly want to read them. We, the young people at the World Urban Forum, believe that digital transformation of urban spaces is critical towards creating sustainable and livable cities. We are the first generation that grew up in the digital age, and we understand and are able to drive the digital transformation. And data governance to harness the digital power for good is critical. The second point for that declaration is to fully leverage the power of digital-driven urban transformation. The active participation and co-leadership by young people using human-centered design for digital solution is absolutely key. We need to ensure that all young people have the appropriate digital skills and education system rapidly need to adapt to equip young people for a digital society. So these are the 2 sort of statements that came out from this session this morning for the declaration. And maybe just my last point to respond to the colleague. Yes and no. I do agree that there are many good examples where active, co-leadership and participation of young people is happening. However, it is quite often actually a relative small group of fortunate young people who are well educated and not necessarily representing the large part of society of young people if you talk about the 1.8 billion. So if we really want to transform, we need to really move from that sort of, I don't want to call it the elitist representation of young people, but definitely a privileged group of young people to really how can we through digital engagement and digital voice reach much broader. And so we need to get much more sophisticated how we're using as organizations these platforms to get voice across really all the different sort of stakeholders involved. And so in terms of the question on Generation Z, I cannot answer that. The only thing I can say that I've lived in Asia, I lived in Malaysia for a number of years. It's the young people themselves from that generation who have to figure it out and don't try to copy what happens by the young people in the West.
Mohamed?
Yeah, thank you, Raphael. I try to summarize on this. Engaging youth, developing youth is a process, unstoppable process, and we need to continue do some capacity building on youth. I think when we talk about problem and the problem within the people around the world, there are no west or east, because when coronavirus come to you, they don't know this is east or west or central like that. When we talk about food security, this is a global issue that I think this is the place, the World Urban Forum is the place where we need to engage and empower young people to understand more. That's why we have this platform. So we cannot deny that culture and value give a different angle and perception on some people. So this is a process. We need to continue to do this. Previously, I'm the president for Malaysian Youth Council. Now I'm no more youth, but I need to understand this and to engage and inspire young people to understand more about this. Thank you. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think
Didier,
your comments have really inspired Didier to say. Right?
Definitely. Definitely. No. I was just thinking about what he was saying. Excusez-moi, je vais continuer en français. Quand il parle
Apologies, I will continue in French. When he talks about violence and extremism, I realize that this happens in places where the state is not present, where the government is not present, urbanization is weak, and young people are not being heard. This is when extremism happens. This is because young people are not being heard, are not being listened to by the government. And that is why they turn towards a system that does listen. This is true in Mali, this is true in Sahel, in Niger, Burkina Faso. These are the forgotten who go towards violent extremism. Once again, we have to place the young people at the heart of all this. They are the solution. They are not only the problem. So we do need to listen to them. We need to take on board their opinion very early on. And they need to be part of the solution, especially in our part of the world. This is how we can protect them from the risk of extremism, violent extremism.
Would any of our other panelists like to respond?
Okay, so I think, there's always a gap between policy and the implementation, and such kind of a gap has disappointed the youth on the ground so far for a long time. So as such, I think that we need to facilitate that the youth can actually join in the implementation on the ground as a main actor, and the youth can actually lead the implementation on the ground as a main actor. So with global kind of the encouragement. So I think that this is a good timing for us to start all together. So thank you very much. It's fine.
Thank you
so much.
Last but not least.
Just one last comment. So I think all of the questions that we heard kind of speak to the way in which urbanization is changing our societies. What we're seeing is changing opportunities to deal with challenges as a new generation of young people come of age. And what we need to think about is not only in terms of how do we address that vision reality gap, but also as the gentleman from Nigeria and Uganda both said, look at the frameworks, the new urban agenda, and think about how those can be used to not only wave out the flag, but also create a lasting idealism that can go into the decade ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any of our panelists like to make a final comment?
It's okay.
Okay. All right. I thank our esteemed panelists and our audience for their amazing views and comments. Yes, you can
Let's
give them
a warm round of applause, really, for the good work that the panelists and ourselves have done. Thank you.
So I think from this panel that we've learned so much, and I think really at the end of the day we've seen that youth need to be empowered in all aspects of agenda setting, decision making and implementation processes, especially in this last decade of action. And this ambitious plan of action can be achieved only if we make our cities and urban spaces more sustainable. And ultimately we require the collaboration of all stakeholders and just instilling a sense of urgency where we move away from tokenism and promises and actually move towards actions at all levels. Over to you.